And this is going to shock you. Back in May, we had 1,500,000 homes for sale. Now, about 1,400,000. So we're not gaining inventory. We're actually losing it. If sellers right now are really desperate to sell their homes, if homeowners are being forced to sell like everyone claims, because if that were true, new listings should be surging. Instead, they fell 12% month over month and 1.6% year over year, according to the latest Redfin data. And this is during the summer, when new listings and inventory should be surging. But that's not a flood. That's a freeze. And it gets worse. Delistings are up 47%. Sellers aren't panicking. They're just removing their home from the market and walking away because they don't need to sell. It's a crash again in inventory. This is not a 2008 style crash. This is something entirely different. And if you're only paying attention to the headlines that tell you inventory is exploding, it's a buyer's market, you're going to get the deal of your dreams, you're missing all the real data under the hood. But today on The Housing Nerd, we're going to break it all down. Hey, if you're new to my channel, welcome. My name is Jason Ferrier. I am a realtor and investor. Think of me as your no BS guide to this crazy housing market. I may not tell you what you want to hear, but I'm going to tell you what you need to hear. And I hope you learned something today on my video. New listings are really the linchpin in the housing market. And you can kind of tell the trajectory of a housing market based on the number of new listings, because if new listings rise rapidly and that same market is not absorbing those new listings with buyers and sold properties, you're certainly going to see an increase in active inventory. So now let's look at some data and see how that's trending. And so this is Redfin, and this is their new listings, down 1.6% year over year. You can see that. And if I change it to month over month, I see that new listings are down basically 12% month over month. And if I look at the value on how many are coming to market with new listings, we've got about 597,700. If I go back to May, I can see we had 678,000 new listings hit the market. And so we're not seeing an increase in sellers deciding to list their homes. Now we need to look at what effect that's having on inventory of homes for sale. And this is going to shock you. Month over month, there's a drop of 5%. And when I look at the value, back in May, we had 1,500,000 homes for sale. Now about 1,400,000. So we're not gaining inventory. We're actually losing it. And what's even more shocking is that demand is starting to pick up. Homes sold, according to Redfin, were up year over year 3%, and month over month up 0.3%. So you've got sellers saying, you know what, now's not the right time to sell my house. You also have sellers pulling their homes from the market. We're going to get to that in a minute. And then you've got more buyers in the market. And again, we're talking about the summertime. This is the prime time when people should be putting their homes on the market. Like if sellers had no choice but to put their home on the market because they were going to lose the home to foreclosure, or they just couldn't afford the payments anymore, or there was a massive financial hardship in their life, like unemployment, property taxes, insurance, divorce, or job change, whatever, you would see that in the new listings because people will put their homes on the market to cash out, or they're just going to take their money and go away. But the supply pipeline is actually contracting, not expanding. Now let's revisit what happened during the great financial crisis, because you hear a lot of people say, right now we're going to have a housing crash worse than 2008. But we all know, and if you don't, you should, that inventory controls that pricing, that price crash. So this chart is from the U.S. Census Bureau data, and it shows us the U.S. existing home inventory for basically the last 25 years. I want you to pay attention to what it looked like back in 2000, not 2008, but 2000. It's clear to see that we have nowhere near the inventory that we had just in the year 2000, forget 2008. But as we approached 2008, the inventory rose, and it rose rapidly, past 2 million, past 3 million. Look at the number of homes for sale, way more than we have now at just 1.4 million approximately. And a big reason for the contraction of the supply pipeline is the delisted homes. Check this out. And so this chart is from realtor.com, and this shows us what's happening with delisted properties. And a delisted property is simply when a owner and a seller decides, you know what, now's not the right time to sell. Maybe I'm not getting the price I want. I'm just going to remove it from the market. So the bars represent how many homes are being delisted. And right now you can see that's about 85,000, 90,000 homes in the month of June were delisted. But when you look at the graph, I'm seeing 45%, close to 50%. So there's a huge explosion in the number of sellers that are like, no thanks, I'm going to pull my home from the market. Now I want you to comment below. Are you seeing that in your market where a home's listed, it doesn't sell, and they cancel the listing? In my little community, I'm seeing it for sure, but I'm curious what you're seeing. So now let's see what Realtor.com has to say about this, because they're going to go into the psychology behind the seller's behavior. And this part is really important. You got to pay attention to this. Unlike in some previous housing cycles, when stalling and falling prices turned underwater homeowners into highly motivated sellers, today's homeowners are sitting on record high levels of home equity, meaning many sellers are deciding to simply take their home off the market if no buyer will meet their asking price. And they wrap up that paragraph in a perfect way. If somebody is not selling their home, they're not buying another one. So that may be one of the reasons why we're seeing lower home sales. And in most markets through the U.S., home prices are still higher than they were last year. While the market might be becoming more buyer-friendly, sellers still hold a trump card, delist the home, and fish for that high asking price at a later date. But I'm curious what you think again. Why are sellers not listing their homes as much, and why are they pulling them from the market? So to further understand what's happening under the hood with these sellers and why they're not listing their homes, we're going to look at an article from Resi Club Analytics. And the name of this article is 100 Housing Markets. One question: how many homeowners are actually underwater? Because to be a motivated, a distressed, a forced seller, you got to have a reason to be distressed. You're not just going to discount your home and fire sale it. That's not going to happen. There has to be a reason why sellers are going to have to put their homes on the market at big discounts. One of those reasons could be equity. In other words, if you owe more on your home than the home is worth and you can't make mortgage payments, chances are you're going to have to dump the home. In many cases, that's a short sale. Even if your equity is small and you don't have any equity at all, really, you may consider dumping your home and becoming a renter again. But according to this article, that's not really happening. 1% is the share of outstanding homeowner mortgages with negative equity, i.e. underwater. At the end of April 2025, so according to the ICE mortgage data, only 1% of homeowners with a mortgage are underwater, meaning they owe more than their home is worth. Now, is 1% a lot? Well, check this out. 23%, the share of outstanding homeowner mortgages with negative equity at the end of September 2009. And then this part is really interesting because Resi Club goes into 3 reasons why homeowners have more equity than they did back during the GFC in 2008, 2009. Reason number 1, nationally, aggregate home prices are still pretty close to all-time highs. While many pockets of the West, Southwest, and Southeast have seen home price decline, at least some from the peak, aggregated single-family prices are still pretty close to all-time highs. Reason number 2, the amortization of ultra-low mortgage rates. Many homeowners locked in ultra-low mortgage rates during the pandemic housing boom, with fixed rates around 2% to 3%. Those monthly payments included a large proportion of principal repayment from the start because interest payments were so low because rates were low. That means borrowers have been paying down their balances more aggressively than they would have under higher rate loans. As of Q4 2024, 54% of outstanding mortgage holders have rates below 4%, which has helped some borrowers build equity faster and give them greater buffer. But they go on. Reason number 3, few buyers actually purchased at the peak in correction markets. This one people get wrong and they overlook all day long. You're probably not going to hear it from many other YouTubers out there that cover the housing market. Even in boom to correction markets like Austin, Texas, or Cape Coral, Florida, only a small share of homeowners bought at the absolute top of the market in spring of 2022. Most current homeowners in those areas bought before the peak. This limited exposure at the peak helps explain why negative equity so far hasn't been a big problem, even in some of the hardest hit metros to really drive their third point home when they talk about fewer buyers actually purchased at the peak in correction markets. I want you to look at this Redfin data. Back in 2022 is when, actually April of 2022 is when the Austin, Texas housing market peaked with home prices at $555,000. You can see that rise was quick and then it fell and fell fast. So by March of 2023, they were actually at $450,000. So that was a big drop of over 100 grand in just a few months. Now look at this data, which is even crazier. This chart will show us the number of home sales in Austin. In April of 2022, there were 3,224 homes sold. And then in May, 500 homes sold. But look what happened after that. Right when prices peaked, home sales started to decline, and they declined big time, all the way down to just 1,600 homes sold in January of 2023. And so while prices were elevated, the number of homes sold, the number of buyers actually buying at those prices was falling. In fact, if I look at the year-over-year change now in the number of homes sold, in 2021, May of 2021, there were 46% more homes sold, but then that number started to drop and it fell all the way down to a negative 36% year-over-year in home sales by November of 2022. And so what this means is basically there weren't a lot of buyers buying at the top of the market in an area like Austin. Fewer people were buying at the peak of the market. And again, a lot of people miss that. Now let's go back to the Resi Club article. And this part here is also something you should understand. While 1% of outstanding U.S. homeowners with mortgages have negative equity, there are a few pockets where it's getting closer to 5%, or it's even slightly higher. So this map from Resi Club is awesome because it shows us the share of outstanding homeowner mortgages with negative equity. And so in Austin, Texas, 4.2% of all homeowners have negative equity or are underwater. Then if you look at San Antonio, 4.3%. Houston, 0.9%. They're under the national average. Look at Los Angeles, 0.1%. This is a fraction of even what Columbus has as far as negative equity homeowners. San Francisco, 0.5%. Look at Denver. A lot of people think Denver is going to completely implode. 0.8%. Look at Phoenix, 1.5%. But the point is, most of these areas are not showing a lot of pain when it comes to homeowner equity. Now, that doesn't mean that that will always be the case. If you get anything out of this video at all, I want you to come to grips with the reality of the market, not what you hope will happen, and don't wait on the market to change for you. If you want to find a home, there are ways to still get a deal. And there are sellers out there that do need to sell. It's not everybody that's in a great situation. So the first thing I would do is pay attention to the new listings in your market. Pay attention to the data. Don't use forecasts like from Zillow or Reventure Consulting that tell you based on an algorithm where prices may go. Instead, look at the data yourself, the raw data of new listings, active listings, and solds in your market to understand what's really happening. If you see new listings explode and active listings explode, it could mean prices are going to come down. If the opposite happens, prices probably won't come down. Number two, you need to get a buy box. You need to understand exactly the type of property you want to buy, the square footage, the style, the area, and the price point. And then you want to pay attention to the data with that buy box. That way you can focus on your buy box each day, each week, however you want to do it. And it gives you permission to ignore the rest of the noise. Number three, look off market. It's okay to use the MLS. It's okay to use Zillow, but also get in your car, drive around the area you want to buy in, and look for homes that look like they may need help, where sellers could be in distress. Because if the roof is old and doesn't look like it's been repaired in a while, if the outside of the house looks like it hasn't been, kept up, that could mean that seller is in distress and needs to sell. And all you have to do is look up their owner information on a public website like the auditor website or a software like PropStream. And the letter is really simple. Hey, my name is Jason Ferrier. I noticed your property at 123 Main Street. I'd like to talk to you about buying it. Call me or text me if you're interested. That's all you have to put in the letter. Very simple, straightforward. And then whatever you do, answer the phone and answer the text messages when they do contact you. And trust me, if you do it enough, you will find an opportunity. Nobody's going to save you in the housing market except yourself. So get off your butt and do something, or stay on the sideline and complain. Now, if you learned something from today's video, do me a favor, hit the like button, subscribe to The Housing Nerd, comment, tell me what you're seeing in your market, and maybe share this video with somebody you think would benefit. And YouTube thinks you'll like this next video right here.